Welcome. My name is Brad Pomerantz. We are coming to you from Washington, D.C. We are joined by Doug LaMalfa. He is a member of the U.S. Congress. He spent 8 years in Sacramento. Now he is in Washington, D.C. How's your new job?
Hey, you know, I don't think much of the commute, but there's a lot of great
Right.
things about it here, being in the nation's capital, being involved with decisions that are both national and international in scope. And,
Sure.
And so it's been just a tremendous honor, but the commute's just the
No, I hear you. I hear you.
You know, but I'm happy to be engaged, and certainly people pay a lot of attention to what we do in Congress if you compare that sometimes to the state legislature.
Which is ironic in that California is such a large state. It's a nation state, essentially. So many important decisions come out of Sacramento. But you're right. I mean, member of Congress, it's a very lofty position. I want to speak with you, though.
You mentioned what comes out of Sacramento. I like to
please.
Remind people when I get a chance, just because you see it happening in California, don't do what we do in California. Okay? We want the rest of the country to still be. Anyway.
Yeah, I've heard of your humor, and I enjoy it very much. I want to talk about whiskey and water. We know that whiskey is for drinking. We know water is for fighting over, as Mark Twain said, not me. And there's
We're going to cover the whiskey first? Or
whatever you want. Let's have some. We are in the nation's capital. Let's talk about the challenges facing California. You're a farmer yourself. You know how the state is just parched and dry. Tell me how bad it is, not as a congressman, but as a farmer. How bad is it?
Certainly. Now, a lot of people want Congress to do something about these issues, and we would like to help affect change on the water supply situation. Some people believe maybe Congress can make it rain, or
right.
maybe Congress itself thinks that.
Let's do a rain dance.
But
right.
It's really not up to us to try and change nature, but certainly we should be doing more to take advantage of what nature does for us. And so it comes down to water storage.
Right.
If we're making more and more places to store water, doing the projects that we should have been doing 40 years ago, it wouldn't be nearly as bad because we've had more stored water over time.
I want to talk about storage because there is no doubt that has become the buzzword of this crisis. We need more storage. And you were in the legislature when the state legislature had passed a bond. It was an $11 billion bond.
Just to place one on the ballot, yes, sir.
Yes.
That's been delayed 2 or 3 times since then.
That's exactly right. And so it has not been on the ballot yet. Right now,
we're doing silly things like high-speed rail and other spending instead.
Well, we'll get there, I
Yes.
promise. But right now there is an effort to revamp the bond. Both Democrats and Republicans are looking at storage, but there's no doubt the Republicans are more focused on more funding for storage. I know you're in Washington now, but that being said, why is it your view and many Republicans' view that it is storage that is the issue of the day?
Well, it's been sold to the voters many times over, say, the last 20 years. All these different bonds are called water bonds. It'll say the Safe, Clean, Reliable Drinking Water Act of 1994, 96, or 98, or
Right.
2002. Yet the water storage never happens in there. It's always other things. And some of it's good infrastructure. I mean, it's good that they're doing more water recycling, they're doing more conservation practices. Those are all good things. The urban areas are doing a good job at that. But we need to have people create more supply to begin with because the population keeps increasing of the state, and the environmental take of shifting water from traditional uses to just pushing more out the delta, out through under the Golden Gate. Every time a court decision comes along, more water is appropriated away from people that are using it towards what I think are dubious non-science outcomes for fish habitat, as
right.
they say.
There's no question that there is this dichotomy now. Are we preferring fish over families? And I want to talk more about that when we
can
come
do
back.
both, though.
And I want to talk more about that when we come back. For our viewers on HLN, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We've been joined by Doug LaMalfa, member of the U.S. Congress. For our other viewers, we'll be right back. So, sir, let's talk about how your view is we can do both, because there is no doubt that for better or for worse, we are starting to see this debate, fish versus family. And you're saying it doesn't need to be that way. Explain.
It's simple, and it's almost, you get tired of hearing myself say it, but if we're storing more water, you have more for everybody else. You know, whether it means urban need, agricultural need, rural cities, rural towns, and environmental uses. So, I mean, we allow tens of millions of gallons of, or acre feet of water to escape that we could be trapping and releasing when we need. I mean, it's really kind of disingenuous that folks complain there's not enough water on the Sacramento River or the other rivers for fish. If we weren't storing the water behind Shasta Dam, we wouldn't have the option to release water for the fish that we are actually doing right now because of that storage project. If it had never been built on truly dry years, 2 or 3 years in a row like what we have, then you couldn't store any water and you wouldn't be releasing any. Therefore, it would be a narrow puddle like people talk about in the past.
In terms of storage, though, I think, like we suggested, there is at some level bipartisan agreement we need storage. We don't know how much in terms of that bipartisan agreement.
I'll be curious to see what that bipartisan agreement really looks like in Sacramento when they're done with this bond.
But that being said, and you would know this better than I, what do we do today, though? Because storage will help us in the future, but it takes time to build storage. So what do we do today?
Right now, it is, again, conservation of what you have, using it wisely. And what's really unfortunate is that we've had a series of storms in central northern California that produce...
Even southern.
Yeah, they're mudslides. You know,
right, that's another conversation.
So it shows that we're not quite ready to make available the water that does happen because, for example, under the 92 Bay Delta Accord, water could have been pumped from the Delta during the storm, where more water than was necessary or required under the 92 Accord was allowed to go out into the Pacific. 100,000 acre feet got away from us that was above the action level of what was required to be in the bay or in the Delta, and could have gone into, been picked up by the pumps and stored somewhere in another facility. 100,000 acre feet lost during these storms.
You talk about conservation, and obviously that's what we can do today. I'm wondering, though, right now, all we see out of the state is requests for voluntary conservation. Governor Brown says, please try to cut your water by 20%.
Well, it's an election year for the governor and everybody.
But that's my question, though. I mean, do we need to take more drastic measures? Some communities are engaging in mandatory conservation. I mean, many in North State are really struggling. How much do we really want?
I believe that's going to come online. What really makes us nervous in rural California are people that have long-standing water rights and water usage is that we're hearing some of the agencies are going to usurp those water rights and just seize beyond what is already allowed by law when you can, in drought years, take down to 25% or 50%. Right. They want to go beyond that, and I think upset a lot of very important water law. They need to come to the districts, come to the water users and say, here's what we need, how can you help us, what can you market, or what can you do to help transfer water from here to there where it's really needed, but do it on a basis where it's collaborative instead of government just coming and taking.
I want to discuss high-speed rail, as you asked. There is no doubt high-speed rail has become a lightning rod in the state. Governor Brown is committed to high-speed rail, yet we see the voters are getting a little wary about it, even though they passed it in 2008. Some of your friends, Mr. Denham, a Republican from the Central Valley, is working to see high-speed rail get derailed, if I may say. Where are we today with high-speed rail?
Well, I helped lead the charge in 2010 when I was in the state Senate to stop the funding of high-speed rail until they had a plan. Well, finally they came out with a plan that showed us the price had tripled from $33 billion to build the rail that the voters were told on the 2008 ballot, when finally in November of 2011 they came out and said, oh, this is going to be $99 billion. Triple the price.
Allegedly,
well, because
68 or
they
something.
now have 68 because they're using the local rail system in San Francisco to San Jose and in northern LA into central LA. So they're trying to cut the costs, but it won't be truly high-speed rail, which doesn't meet the mandate of Prop 1A the voters passed. So it's going to be illegal in that sense when it finally is vetted out. You're not going to have a high-speed train that goes all the way.
And the courts have weighed in and have really validated your position. It's not truly high-speed rail. There isn't enough funding as required.
It's just simple math. They only have $13 billion of identified money. $3 billion from the federal stimulus package, which wasn't even anticipated in 2008. It's something because of the President Obama's election that they threw in on top, and we only have just under $10 billion of state bonds that could be spent. So there's only $13 billion out of the $68 billion downsized one.
In our final moments then, what do we do though? What do we do?
We need to put it back in front of the voters to say, why don't we use the money that is set aside? I'm going to ask the president with a letter we're going to have to him, say, Mr. President, you've been to the valley, you've seen the drought, let's shift the money away from high-speed rail and the stimulus money that only you seem to control and put it towards helping California's drought by building supply.
His name's Doug LaMalfa. I'm Brad Pomerantz. It's California Edition.